My name is Sam Watts and I'm game producer for Tammeka Games, working on Radial-G. Radial-G has changed a fair bit since the end of our Kickstarter campaign. We have moved on through the Steam Greenlight selection process and then getting funding to further development. The first thing we did was update the single player demo so that it supports the 0.4.2 SDK from Oculus and smooth it all out for DK2 owners. And then we started with our full-scale development. So we've gone from the microchip inside a computer type world of the single player demo to the first of the 3 environments that we teased and suggested that we'd work on during the Kickstarter campaign. The first one that we've focused on is the deep space mining colony, and this is the environment for our Steam Early Access release. There's the main environment, which is deep space, and then there's 3 tracks set within that overall environment. There's the dead zone, which sees you racing alongside a derelict space station, and then there's the processing plant, where you race inside and outside of this huge great Orbulus processing plant for asteroid mining. And then there's the short asteroid sprint that just has you flying through lots of asteroids. The other environments that we're looking to create are still the ones that we teased within the Kickstarter, the dust pits, typical sort of pod racer-esque dusty canyons and desert plains style environment. That's going to be the biggest challenge for us, I think, because of our whole low simulated sickness side of things, because that will give you a full horizon. So that's going to be interesting to work on. And then we want to update the world from the single player demo into a more fully fleshed futuristic city with cars flying overhead and much more life and things going on. And more of an overall futuristic city rather than a futuristic city that is also made out of components. F-Zero is always a big inspiration for the game, and we always wanted to include a lot of detailed environments building upon what we already created with the single player demo. The single player demo had a lot of close-up buildings and structure which hid that there wasn't much behind it. But with space, you've got much more, pardon the pun, space to play with, and we can have a lot more happening in the background, such as the asteroids crashing into the track, or the derelict space station, and a lot more near, medium and far distance objects to sort of give that real sense of scale and loneliness whilst you race against others online. But it's always been a key component for us to have detailed environments with a lot happening. So when you do have time to stop and look around, there's actually something to look around at. That's one key component of our design, is the fact that Oculus allows you to look all around you, is that every single angle has to be interesting and relevant and detailed and there for a purpose. With traditional racing games, when you go past a crowd and you stop, you look at the crowd, it's a whole load of 2D repeating the same 5 people, then you kind of lose that sense of immersion. But in order to maintain that level of immersion and presence with VR, we don't want to fall into that trap, so that at any point you can stop wherever you are on the track, whichever side, then there's always a valid scape to gaze at and take in. To a certain degree, the trade-off with level of detail and the power of PC isn't so much of a problem for us, because there's already a fairly high spec requirement for smooth gameplay with Oculus DK2. A lot of early adopters are upgrading their kits and buying mid to high-end graphics cards to be able to maintain the necessary 75 frames per second. So we are lucky in that sense that we've got a hardcore PC gaming group who have the hardware able to play it smoothly. But then we also have to take into consideration our standard monitor players who may not be of the same sort of tier of hardware. But so far through our tests, you can run it on an Intel HD 4000 and it still looks as good on the standard monitor. I think we're going to have to see how it plays out in terms of our Steam Early Access adopters and the range of hardware. Of course, part of Steam Early Access is that it's not a finished product, it's not fully optimized, so we can work with them to further create a solution for them that runs at a good quality whilst still maintaining a high level of performance. And it's just that trade-off between graphics and performance. One of the things we're working on at the moment is all the different tiers of graphical settings and automatically detecting, based upon how much VRAM you've got, to set that automatically based on what we think your current machine is capable of. The early access periods we aim to keep fairly short. We're looking around 3 months ideally. We have plans in place for development if early access isn't as successful as we hope, but we have plans in place to cope with a huge demand and a lot of income. We are using the Steam Early Access to fund that last leg and provide all the polish and feedback and have the opportunity to engage our rapidly growing community of fans. But we don't want to be one of those games like Rust or DayZ that has been in early access for years and have come out and said that they're still going to be in it for years to come. We don't want to treat it as a prolonged test bed. We want to fully adhere to the new Steam early access guidelines and use it for what it is and allow us to release a full polished product sooner rather than later. When the Steam early access period finishes, we will of course continue to develop the game. We don't want to do a Double Fine and Space Base, whatever it was, and we're not going to say when it comes out of early access, that's it, we're not going to develop it anymore. When it comes out of early access into version 1.0, we've already got plans and ideas for 1.1, 1.2 and future content updates. We see Radial-G as being a fully fledged product ready for when Oculus do finally release the commercial product, and we want to be that system seller that people will go to when they've got their shiny new commercial headset and they've got a fully fledged title ready and waiting for them. We are still pursuing our avenues and our options with Sony and the Project Morpheus. We are now registered Sony developers. We haven't got the hardware yet, but we are going to be looking at it again next year. But for the moment, we are concentrating purely on the Windows release of our Steam Early Access and getting that to version 1.0. And then once we've got a fully fledged product that's successful there, to whatever degree, then we feel that we can go back to Sony with more valuable data and examples and reasons of why they should take it onto Morpheus. We've had the conversations with Shui, and he's still very keen and still supporting us. We know that we will get a Morpheus headset. It's just a case of a few develop and design processes to go through to get there. We've looked at Gear VR, and initially it's something, as a technology, it's something we find very, very exciting and something we do want to work with in the future. As Radial-G stands at the moment, it's not something that we feel would perform to the levels that we expect and Oculus would expect because of the amount of geometry and the detail that we have. But we're certainly open to creating a light stripped down version of Radial-G for Gear VR in the future. Our long-term plan for Radial-G, today we've got the Steam Early Access launch, and we're obviously going to be watching that very, very closely. It's slightly unfortunate, obviously, because we've got Christmas, but then we'll be updating that throughout the Early Access campaign, and adding more features and more environments that we want to get it to a level where we're happy to call it version 1.0. So to get to 1.0, we want to add at least a couple more environments, at least 3 more tracks per environment. So we're looking at 9 in total, and then mirrored and reversed versions that will give you 27 variations overall. And then we're looking at AI as well, so you've got offline races, single player just against AI, or possibly even filling the multiplayer slots in lobbies with AI, but that doesn't work in various ways. You don't want to create just mobile chicanes. But then once we've actually come out of the early access period and into 1.0, then we'll be looking at creating more environments, more tracks, more ships, more variations. And then a lot of the other features that we talked about in the Kickstarter, such as the pilot customization, the ship customization, even a track editor, and a lot more features that build the community and allow people to share their own content and creations, and make it a widely popular, fully fledged game.